to guide us into the battle at hand, we have an intergenerational panel to uplift how we can draw on the long tradition of resistance here in Tennessee as our roadmap for the nation ahead. So I'm thrilled to welcome these real-life, Tennessee-based superheroes to our conversation. So first, Representative Justin Jones needs no introduction to you. He is a member of the Tennessee House of Representatives for District 52. Not only is he the youngest black member serving at the Tennessee State House of Representatives, but he is one who has been creating some good trouble since his election in 2022. Please welcome Representative Justin Jones. Please also welcome Adrienne Gott, a seasoned activist at her young age, a member of the Mayor's Youth Council in Nashville, Tennessee. We also welcome Professor Leorotha Williams from Tennessee State University, specializing in African American history. Now, Tim Wise came far to join us today, literally around the corner. This nationally renowned, Nashville-born and bred anti-racist writer and educator is a senior fellow at the African American Policy Forum. And last, and certainly not least, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Bernard Lafayette, a renowned So Dr. Lafayette is a renowned civil rights activist, a theologian, an academic, mentee of Reverend Lawson, and a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Tonight, we celebrate and honor Dr. Lafayette's immense courage and sacrifice during the freedom rides of 1961, and that of so many other youth who risked their lives to change our world. Their legacy is what we refuse to abandon. From whence they came is where we will not return. Yes. He is the author of In Peace and Freedom, My Journey in Selma. We have copies of his memoir here today. We are so honored to have him joining us. So, are we ready? Yeah. So, to engage us and with us throughout the panel, please visit www.menti.com and use the code 394025. That's 394025. Once you type in this code, you'll be taken to a page where you can share your thoughts and your comments. We hope to incorporate your insights throughout the conversation. Okay, so we've had some conversations with each other. We like to think of this as you are joining a conversation already in progress. So we have several rounds, and we're going to sort of ask folks to paint a picture of the current situation on the ground. We're going to invite people to tell us a little something about how they're engaging, dealing, feeling about what we're doing. We're going to talk about the conditions of the possibility. How did we get to this place again? And then we're going to talk about what is to be done. So first, let me say what an honor it's been to be working with you, Representative Jones, to create this gathering here in Tennessee. We hatched this plan After a wonderful conversation that we had at Encore in May, so here we are 2 months later, we're actually here, you're here. This is a testament to the power of collaboration and community building. So thank you for having us. Thank you for opening this space to us. And thank you for your trust in us. So you have been describing Tennessee as the tip of the spear. And we've been saying it over and over again, right? The tip of the spear. And so we like to use this first round to kind of level the playing field, get a sense of where we're at. So can you describe for us what you mean when you say that this state's a war on wokeness is a piece of why you use the frame, the tip of the spear? I call it the war on wokeness, otherwise known as the coordinated effort to make our country hate again. So give us a sense of what you mean when you say tip of the spear, some snapshots, if you will.
Definitely. Well, first I just want to say what an honor it is, and also how nerve-wracking it is to be on a panel with people who are your professors. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, the iconic voice of justice and racial justice that has grounded us in this work. And Dr. Lafayette, he's been a mentor for almost a decade now, teaching us about the importance of nonviolent direct action that's not passive, but it's confrontational to injustice. And so I just want to say this panel is anchored by two giants who really inspire us, and it's been intimidating to be on with you. But I'm glad that we're here, because this is about centering ourselves in a space where the works of Dr. Crenshaw about intersectionality, about critical race theory, are more dangerous to my colleagues than assault weapons. Right. They have banned books like critical race theory, but they have not banned the guns that took the lives of 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults right here in Nashville a year ago. And so I want to talk about Tennessee being the tip of the spear because it's a place where they have experimented. This has been a laboratory where they've tested out these horrific ideas and policies to bring us backward in our history. And what they're doing is they're nationalizing them. Mm-hmm. How many people have heard about Project 2025? Yeah. Well, I want to tell you a secret. Project 2025 is Tennessee 2024. That's right. We are already experiencing what it's like to live in a state where 1 in 5 black men cannot vote because of felony disenfranchisement. We know what it's like to live in a state where they've consolidated power, where they've taken over, they tried to take over a black city, Mason, Tennessee. They tried to, they got rid of the board of trustees at a black university, Tennessee State University. They tried to expel black lawmakers, but there's another plan. But what they will not do, what they fail to recognize is that as we talk about the fight for democracy, we can't talk about fighting for democracy without talking about fighting for racial justice.
That's right.
Because Tennessee is the birthplace of the KKK, but it's also the birthplace of the Nashville student movement, where young people like Diane Nash and Bernard Lafayette and C.T. Vivian and Reverend Lawson, young people rose up and did things that made the power structure uncomfortable, but made it so that I could be the youngest black lawmaker here today. And I believe that we must continue. It's so amazing to see so many students here because it's our time now. This is not about just memorializing the civil rights movement. This is about continuing the movement. That monuments are nice, but continuing the movement is so much better. Right. Yeah. And that's what we're called to do in this time. So it's an honor to be here with you all.
So, Adrian, let me come to you to build on the snapshot that we've just heard from Justin. And I also want to bring into this conversation what I just mentioned about the neo-Nazis that harassed young people downtown. Now, for a lot of us, the thought that we'd have to actually incorporate the real risk that we're encountering neo-Nazis in our lives again is just impossible to wrap our heads around. But that's not the only moment where neo-Nazis made themselves apparent in our own quest just to be free. So as a young person, talk a little bit about some of the encounters you've had with neo-Nazis, with those who are trying to force us back to a place that we don't want to go back to.
Right, I understand you. First, I want to say thank you all for having me here. It is beyond an honor just to sit with you and to hear your incredible voices and stories, so I definitely wanted to honor that before I began. Yes, so here we are in Nashville, and We see so much hatred from, honestly, hate groups. I think that we should call them as they are, and with neo-Nazis. And first, I'd like to point out where these people are actually assaulting others, where they're trying to make Nashvillians feel uncomfortable. In Nashville, Tennessee, we have one of the most diverse metro councils throughout the country, right? We're very proud of that. We love our people. We love getting them in positions of powers and in office. And in Nashville, when neo-Nazis did attack, they came to places that hit the hardest, if you know your history. They came to Diane Nash Plaza. They came to student groups where there are different peers and different leagues. So I think to have them in our city is beyond ridiculous. But I think that we also hold something very special in Nashville, being that we are literally from the Nashville student movement. So I'm a part of a group, and we commemorate the life of John Lewis and his legacy all throughout the year, and we plan, and I know Representative Jones knows, we've had marches and those kind of things, but I think it's very interesting how we live in an era, and we had an event this month honoring the life of John Lewis, and we were met by neo-Nazis within our city on Diane Nash Plaza. So I think that calls to a reality, because I think there's such a misconception, especially being a Nashville native, that Nashville, it's definitely a diverse city, it's definitely a city of love, but I do believe that it's a city that people are upfront about their hate and upfront about how they want to address students. And it's very, very interesting because there is a focus on neo-Nazis for those that care, for people like us, for those who want to be in the conversation. But I believe that when it came to March for Our Lives and the attempted expulsion of fellow Representative Jones, there is less of a focus on things that I feel like actually impact young people, such as gun violence. And there's less of an address of that, and that's how that hate is manifested throughout our city. So it's definitely been very hurtful to see, but I think that there is power. I think that there is courage within young people. I think just as we have organized, we will continue to organize, and that's been a bit of my story with that hatred.
Follow up with you just for a minute to get a little bit of a detail, and I'll tell you the reason why I was talking about the January 6th report, and my own sense that the white nationalist, Nazi, Klan, organized white supremacist dimension of that has been underappreciated, addressed. In part because of the connections to the more legitimate parts of the party from which they come, makes some people uncomfortable. Yet, there was an effort to actually, if I understand it correctly, change the name of John Lewis Way to Donald Trump Way. And this is what the neo-Nazis were trying to get behind. So can you just say just a few words about that for our audiences who are not from Nashville, just so they can see the connection?
Yes, I will definitely say in the past 2 years there have been a neo-Nazi presence. I don't know their schedule or how they work or what they plan for their agenda to be, but this presence has been, at least from what I've seen, throughout the 2 summers within Nashville. But then I do also recall being in protest of changing John Lewis Way to Donald Trump Way, and also being met with backlash and hate there. Thank goodness we have secured our place, and rightfully so, a legacy for John Lewis. But those measures of hate have manifested throughout our city. They have become a more lively reality of just walking downtown. So that's definitely hurtful, and it's especially hurtful when the people who are actually doing the work and behind the scenes of planning out these protests and rallies and marches are young people. They are in high school. So many of my peers have gone to council meetings and have been met with hatred of just not wanting young people in that space, not wanting people of color in that space, not wanting us to fulfill roles of leadership and legacy. So having them within our city definitely is not something that we want whatsoever, but I think that we are definitely up for leaving our mark.
Thank you. Representative Jones, you wanted to say something about that?
I know the schedule of the neo-Nazis, and I just want to let you know they meet January through May at the Tennessee Capitol. We question why are neo-Nazis coming to Nashville. They come to Nashville because you spend more time protecting Confederate monuments than you do giving public education to our students, giving people health care. They come to Nashville because you're so committed to felony disenfranchisement that you made it so 1 in 5 black men cannot vote, but then actual criminals you want to put on the presidential ticket for your party. Neo-Nazis are coming to Nashville because you are banning books and you are attacking drag queens, but when black kids are attacked downtown on Broadway, you have nothing to say. In fact, Metro PD were harassing these young black children for playing drums without a permit, but said nothing to neo-Nazis, threatening them and calling them the N-word and calling them monkeys, did nothing but threaten these babies, these young 8-year-olds and 14-year-olds with arrest. That's why neo-Nazis are here. So I always tell my Republican colleagues, we don't want your condemnation because what you're doing is a call and response. And now neo-Nazis are coming here. You want to say, oh, well, how did they come here? You called your cousins and now you're wondering why they're here. That's what happened.
So Lee, I want to come to you and ask you to fill in a little bit more of this story, particularly with reference to history. You're a historian, you train teachers in this state. What are you seeing happening right now that fills out the story of backlash here in Tennessee?
Well, first, thank you, Justin, for inviting me to be here. As I think about what we are experiencing now, I realize that for most of our sojourn here in America, where we learn our history, where we learn about ourselves, how we teach it, who we focus on, has always been controlled by the outside, right? It's only been recently that we have been able to take these shackles off, where now our history is out there in the world and it cannot be controlled. I teach history at TSU. I teach a course called the African American Experience in the United States. It's an ambitious course because I wanted it to be part of the gen ed, right? So that every student that came to TSU could take black history if they wanted. And it goes from 15th century Africa to the day before yesterday. But all of our teachers, everybody that graduates with a College of Ed degree from TSU has to take at least one course in African American history. And I'm a PhD in history, so that means I'm kind of vain, right? So I'm like, all right, y'all gonna be out here in the world talking about black history, and I don't want y'all to say that y'all was Dr. Williams' student and be out there embarrassing me, right? So I make sure that my lectures are tight. I make sure that they have access to all of the materials that they'll need to teach African American history. Everything from the textbooks that I receive to the PowerPoints, they have access to everything. But when they graduate, and they do their thing as teachers, I still get students that come to TSU that don't know anything about black history. And there's a disconnect somewhere that I'm still grappling with, right? It's either they are forgetting stuff, but these students that leave my class, I will put them up against any students of African American history in this city. But I feel as though they don't get the opportunity to teach this history the way that it needs to be taught. Now, how do we deal with this? I humbly submit to you that we need to redefine what a classroom looks like.
All right.
I teach most of my classes are held in 319 Crouch Hall. And I get down in that class, right? But I don't know, I feel as though sometimes better course might be taught at Hadley Park. Or it might be taught at the corner of 4th and MLK, where we put up that slave market, historical marker. It might be better taught in your churches, in the places where you meet. Or it might be better taught in your homes. So that the history lessons are something that your children can get as soon as they hit the door or at your dinner tables. So it's been fashionable to try to rein in how we talk about our past, how we explore the past. Because on one hand, you have a certain group out there that's they don't really want folks to know what happened back in the day.
All right.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to teach our history in places that are insulated from their control.
Yeah.
Teach our history in places where we can teach it the way it needs to be taught.
Absolutely. And later in the conversation, I want to take you up on your distinction between the way the history is taught, because that's really what they're going after, right? The way it's taught, what is elevating, what we are elevating. And if we don't understand that, we'll take the okie doke, right? A couple facts right here and there, a couple firsts, throwback to ancient Africa, and they think we're done. So we want to come back and get a sense of what is at stake in the way the history is being taught. Tim, for your opening, you're born here, you're raised here, you have traveled to every corner of the country talking about issues of race. As a person who's been here in Tennessee for most of your life, what alarms you about how the war on woke is playing out here?
Well, everything alarms me, but I think the interesting thing about racism, the way it plays out in the city and the way it plays out in the state, that's always been very disorienting, is that racism, that hostility that you see down on Broadway and with Nazis and such, always sort of exists side by side with this really genteel, polite way that Nashvillians like to talk to one another and Tennesseans, and it's very disarming. Like when I moved back here 28 years ago from New Orleans, I almost didn't move back, and the reason was some big magazine had just voted Nashville the nicest city in America, and I was like, oh God. I didn't want to go to the nicest city in America, because nice is the enemy of justice. Yes. Nice is the enemy of getting stuff done, because sometimes to get stuff done, you have to be not nice.
Right.
And you have to raise your voice, you have to crack eggs, you have to make people upset. And so the idea that I was coming back to a place where you had to speak in whispers and be nice was disconcerting to me. But I came back, and what I came back to was a state that was already by the mid to late 90s starting to move in this direction. This was a state that, and it was never all that progressive, but look, we were a state that sent moderate to liberal folks to Washington as senators. We were a state that was run by Democrats, albeit Democrats that put a bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest in the Capitol, so there is that. But in other words, it wasn't this MAGA nightmare that we're in now. That begins in around 2000 when a bunch of suburbanites started listening to our local Rush Limbaugh, a guy named Phil Valentine, who has since died of COVID because, it's a myth. Okay, Phil. Keep up. And they started protesting the income tax proposal, and then from then on, it just became this huge culture war thing. And now we've gotten to the place where we got folks trying to make Nashville their MAGA Hollywood. Right. So you got Tommy Lawrence here, Candace Owens is here, Matt Walsh is here, the entire staff of Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire is here. And why? Because they want to take advantage of our entertainment infrastructure, the studios, the culture of creatives for these pernicious right-wing ends, right? So that is really alarming to me. We don't talk enough about the attempt to shift the culture. I think that's important. Again, don't get me wrong, Tennessee was never that progressive, but it wasn't this. And I'm going to give you an example, and it relates to TSU. Back in 1989, a bunch of students at TSU, one of whom I had gone to high school with, amazing activist here in Nashville, led a huge protest at Tennessee State to protest dilapidated conditions. They are obviously historically underfunded, as they are now, again. They took over a building. They went on hunger strike for over a week to get the governor at that time to come and look at the conditions at Tennessee State. And when they did that, the governor at that time, a Democrat named Ned Ray, y'all, Ned Ray. That's not like leftists don't name their children Ned Ray. You understand? So Ned Ray went over to Tennessee State and looked at these buildings, and he said, you know what, this is a travesty, and he found the money, and they did a bunch of renovations. Now, 35 years later, TSU was once again getting the short end of the stick relative to the University of Tennessee, still getting underfunded. But the point of me bringing it up is this: if students were to go on hunger strike right now at Tennessee State to get this governor to do something, this governor, this guy who poses as a governor but really runs an HVAC company, this governor, right? If they were to go on hunger strike for to try to get this man to move, they would all die or be in the hospital before anything changed. So that is the thing that we have to worry about right now. And I want to say one more thing. It's not just the right wing. I'm going to tell you the problem is we live in a city where liberal folks have not stood up to fight this nonsense. We live in a city where they allow the Woolworths, where this man and his colleagues and compatriots sat in, to be turned into a cabaret show, yo. A cabaret show, a Cirque du Soleil kind of cabaret show that isn't even appropriate for children. They took it and they turned it into that. And the first thing they did in that spot, when that guy bought it, was they brought Candace Owens to bring her anti-George Floyd, he wasn't really killed video. She made this absurd movie that George Floyd died of a heart attack, had nothing to do with Derek Chauvin. They had their premiere at the Woolworths, and it wasn't just Republicans who were responsible for that. This city could have said, we're going to declare this a historic site. We're not going to let y'all do this. We're going to raise money to make sure that somebody buys this that isn't y'all. And they were just like, well, whatever. Because they didn't even have a marker down there when I was growing up. They didn't even have a marker down there for like 30 or 40 years. So we can't just worry about, I'm worried about Nazis. I'm a Jew, so it's like part of my DNA. But you can't just worry about Nazis, and I can't just worry about right-wingers. I got to worry about a mayor that doesn't stand up. I got to worry about a Democratic caucus that doesn't stand up. I got to worry about other black lawmakers that won't stand up for this man.
It's all an effort to smooth the path to the past, right? So on that, Dr. Lafayette, I want to come to you. So we have been saying we won't go back. But I wonder sometimes whether the urgency of saying that may be lost on those who haven't really been fully exposed to the realities that you as a young person committed to fighting for, in the face of real risk to your life, for sitting down at a lunch counter, for riding on a bus in whatever seat you wanted to, for simply casting a ballot. This is precisely the history that is being framed as too divisive to be taught. This is the history that we can experience, but to be told this history is too much for children, and we know which children they're really concerned about to hear. So before you speak, I want everybody to take a look at the courage and the sacrifice that groups like Moms for Liberty don't want future generations to hear about. So let's take a look at this clip. So Dr. Lafayette, we say that it's important that children of all races learn from history and understand it, lest we repeat it. Help us understand how important it is that the history of what you have been part of be brought forward in this precise moment when there are efforts to erase it.
First of all, I want to say that thank you for the invitation to come and be a part of such a significant and historic moment. And this is not just about Nashville.
All right.
We're not just talking about Tennessee. And we're just not talking about the South. What's important for us to understand is that we behave in such a way, whatever part of the country we live in, that it has this impact. No, we talk about the South. Oh, I've lived in Tampa, Florida. That's where I was born. And I've lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when I was young, that was right after the war, World War II. There was a great migration that took place. I was part of that migration. So everybody started wanting to change where they lived because they thought things could be different. And those who moved due north, like those on the Florida, Georgia, they moved to the East Coast, which we call the East Coast, Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C., and a lot of those places up north. And those from Mississippi, where do you think they moved? Chicago.
All right.
And East St. Louis. That was another place they, okay? And those who moved north was looking for a better life. Those from Louisiana, guess what people don't know? In a couple of years out of Louisiana, you had 2,000 black folks moved north and turned white. Yeah. And that was, yeah. Not being accepted. What's this white and yeah. Oh yeah. Lafayette. Right down the road here. You'll sit right and seeing on the front row right here most of my relatives. Yeah. Yeah, Jane's my relative. Yeah. Yeah. Kate Lafayette. How many names is Bulls? You heard of Bulls before? They came from Killings, Alabama. And they came down and to build a supermarket and they had to plan march. Now, you know what her mother did? Her mother used to, when the Klan marched in Tuskegee, her mother used to get the students from Tuskegee University, Tuskegee Institute, and have them come out and watch the Klan parade. So when people threaten you, you've got to make it a parade. Because their purpose is to run you off the street. But suppose you run out to meet them.
All right.
Her father?
In the spirit of running out to meet them, that's exactly what CRT Summer School is about. We're trying to run out to meet them.
Yeah.
So thank you for that information. I'm going to reverse the order and bring people back, right? So we've got a pretty good sense of what Tennessee.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Got a sense of what Tennessee lawmakers are up to, banning books, divisive concept laws, crackdowns on LGBTQ folks, hostility to everything from police accountability to DEI efforts. I think the question, Tim, I want to bring back to you is why should people in other states, particularly, those blue states, have to worry about? What should they be thinking about in this moment when they look here to Tennessee?
Well, I think Dr. Lafayette just alluded to that by saying this isn't a Southern thing, right? He's talking about Philadelphia. He's talking about Chicago. He understands, Dr. King said Chicago was probably the most racist place he'd ever tried to organize. Malcolm X said famously the South was anything south of the Canadian border, right? and so this red state, blue state thing is a little bit of a misnomer. You got red states that have blue dots or bluer dots like Nashville, Memphis, and Chattanooga on a good day. You got red states, you have blue states that have lots of red. You got dozens of school districts in California right now that have banned books just like the state of Tennessee. Now, they may not be doing it at the state level because they can't get that through Sacramento, but at the local level, which is where school policy is made the vast majority of the time, they are removing books. They are doing the same kinds of things that are happening in red states. So we have to understand that it isn't just a Southern thing. Secondly, the idea that anything about race can remain contained for very long is not true. Racism is a national affliction, has always been a national affliction. Indiana had the biggest Klan in the country in the 20s. Michigan had the second biggest Klan in the 20s. The guy that came down here in 1957 to stir up hatred in the face of integration was from New York City, y'all. Right? And then Pennsylvania, as of 2 or 3 years ago, had the largest number of hate groups per capita of any state in the country. And so when we talk about the issue, we cannot isolate this into South versus not South because it all can move very easily. And we learned this back in the early 90s in Louisiana. As many of y'all know, the first thing I did was work against David Duke, former Klan leader, white supremacist neo-Nazi, when he was running for Senate. I didn't say that for applause, but thanks. Okay. I'm glad we're all on board. David Duke is bad. We're good. So in 90 and 91, that's what people said. Here's a guy gets 60% of the white vote, 6-0. 55% of the white vote in the governor's race. So the majority of white folks were like, nah, he's a Nazi, but I like his position on taxes or something, and so I'm just going to vote for him, right? And people said to us, well, that's just Louisiana. Y'all are different. Y'all are weird. You're different. You do things different. That'll never work nationally. You could never get a candidate that racist to succeed at the national level. And we were like, oh, okay, all right. And our line then, and it's the line now, is that racism is a lot like cocaine. It is deadly. It is easily transported across state lines, and it's white. So
So there you have it.
So Leah, I'm going to come to you, and we're going to sort of mix it up just a little bit, because we've just heard that Tennessee is not unique. The problem is not unique. There's racism everywhere. And at the same time, there are particular histories in particular places that have to be accounted for. So you've talked about how the pattern of reform and then retrenchment in Tennessee, going all the way back to Reconstruction, has a uniqueness to it that we need to understand in order to see the cycle playing out. So talk a little bit about what you've been sharing about reform retrenchment then and reform retrenchment now.
It's interesting because in many ways, if you look at our history, you'll see a blueprint, right? The Union Army comes here in 1862, and Nashville is taken over by the Union. So if you're a black person living here, if you're at the public square and you see all these guys in these blue suits, you have the mind that, hey, things are gonna be different around here. But those same dudes in the blue suits forced people to make Fort Negley. Fort Negley over there is, and Fort Negley is a sacred site in this city. It's almost like an Ellis Island for Tennessee. But nonetheless, black folks come there seeking freedom. So it's like an Ellis Island for them in some ways. And they don't come here empty-handed, right? They bring their culture. So everything that makes Nashville a cool place to be, those folks who came here seeking freedom had a say in all of that. And that includes the Athens of the South, the Music City, and whatever other nickname you want to give us. But nonetheless, slavery ends 1865. Christmas Eve, 1865, the Ku Klux Klan forms in Pulaski. Nathan Bedford Forrest, whom Justin was instrumental in getting his bust removed from the Capitol, he was sworn in as the Klan leader in this city. So when you think about what's going on right now, when there was Nazis walking through the streets, white supremacists walking through the streets, that ain't the first time. Black folks get the right to vote for a little bit during Reconstruction. Okay. 1870, the 15th Amendment is ratified. Black men get the right to vote. But that same year, that very same year, Tennesseans elected a governor that we know was the leader of the Klan in Maury County to be governor. Black folks push, they strive to obtain freedom. Then here the 1950s come around, and now you have a group of young people who are in Nashville at the same time. And this is one of the things that I think that makes this place peculiar, because you have people like Dr. Lafayette and John Lewis and Diane Nash and James Lawson. They're all here at the same time. So they force America, they force this city to do some things that they weren't quite ready to do. But by the end of the 60s, we began to see things go back to the way that they were before. So as we look at what you're observing right now, and you might think of it being an aberration or something that's out of the ordinary, I humbly submit to you that it's a feature of our life here in this city.
Mm-hmm. I was particularly struck when you spoke about it the other day. We know that there's a pattern of reform and retrenchment. We know the only guarantee about progress is that when pressure wanes, progress unravels, right? We know that our society is like a rubber band. We have to continuously stretch it to open up that opportunity. And the moment we get comfortable, or the moment we think, oh, well, we've had a black president, or the moment that we think we have, black multimillionaires, the moment we think people are getting paid, is the moment that retrenchment happens. And so what was so striking to me is that sometimes the places that were the head of the game are sometimes the first ones to snap back. And it was a useful prism to think about why after the summer of 2020, when there were so many promises, there were so many protests, there was such a feeling in the air that things were really about to change. We were on the precipice of something, that some of the most dramatic retrenchment actually happened. So we didn't just go back to where we were in 2020. We went back to before 2020, where you can't talk about this stuff. You can't march about this stuff. You can't teach about this stuff. It's like, we don't like the game you were playing with your toys, so we're going to take your toys away from you. So I want to come to you, Adrian, on that question, because some of us are old enough to remember the Freedom Riders. We watched it on TV if we couldn't be part of it, right? And so for us, there's this sense of, are we in deja vu, right? We've seen this before. For your generation, fighting to preserve rights that you probably thought past generations had secured for you must be like throwing you into a history that you read about but never particularly experienced, or putting you on a ship and taking you to another land that is alien to you. So I'm really curious to hear about how your generation of activists is processing the fact that you are being presented to fight things that everything has been telling us is in our past. Why are we fighting this stuff again?
Right. Yes, I completely know where you're coming from, a little all too well. And for me, in my experience as a student seeking advocacy, is that guidance has been the best form of leadership. But I think the most harmful thing that comes from generations that are prior to Gen Z is performative activism and lack of intersectionality. And let me tell you, performative activism gets us nowhere. And what I mean by that is, and some people, I don't know, maybe called out, maybe not, but I truly do see this from my parents and family and older generations of, oh, we've had a Black president, we've had great historical leaders, and you may or may not hear about these things in school just because of what's going on in Tennessee with banned books, but we are born into a generation where we feel like we're already there, you already have a shot at this. But I think what's so detrimental and almost counteracts that ideology is the fact that we know, for example, with the Black community, there is a sense of love and passion and transformation and what we've learned about racism until we talk about the queer community, until we talk about the needs of Black kids. Yeah, but what about trans Black kids? What about when we look at underrepresented communities when it comes to classism? That's not a conversation that I truly feel like our elders are willing to have for us. How do we put on not just one boot of advocacy, but both? And I think that it becomes detrimental to how we see ourselves because we're living in such a generation where, whether people acknowledge it or not, differing demographics are prideful to us. And I believe that if we're not guided the right way, it feels like that uncomfortable struggle that we're already seeing within our legislatures, plus no support, right? So it's like, what do we do with that mentorship, and how do we go from there? And then I also think that there are fundamental systems, if you will, that we lack. I know that talking about mental health is not something that's a stray from us. That's a conversation that we want to have. We are crying out to our elders and our peers saying, hey, we're going to keep coming to you to ask for this support and accepting us. But I truly do think that there becomes a time where if we're not receiving that support, we are making that legacy for ourselves, whether we're accepted or not. Rather we are seen fully for how we are, rather we are mentored rightfully, and we receive that leadership. So it is like reliving our history, but I would like to believe that the civil rights movement actually never ended. I think that is such a false narrative, and that it's going to take us and our work and our passions to truly seek justice, because if we won't, then we won't have any leaders to reflect on or any change to reflect on at that.
And so you have so perfectly articulated intersectionality, right? The idea that, of course, in the fight for racial justice, we experience racial injustice through the totality of who we are, through our gender, through our gender identity, through our class, through our particular histories. These are some of the ways in which our history has been experienced, and we hope to teach it, that have been interrupted by the ban on certain ideas. So, Ali, I'm still coming back to you on that. But before I do, Justin, let's talk about the conditions of possibility. So it's one thing to say, in the quest to make this country great again, the MAGA faction has tried to rewrite and force their narrative upon us. We kind of know that part of the story. But my hunch is that alone they couldn't have done it without some help from some strange bedfellows. So can you talk a little bit about the other dynamics that are at play here that have in some ways muted our response to the anti-woke assault?
Definitely. I think the first thing I want to say too is that when we say that, offer this thesis that Tennessee's the tip of the spear, it's not about saying that Tennessee's special, but it's really a message, to be quite honest, to liberals. That so often when you're on social media, you see people saying, oh, the South, they deserve that. Oh, let them secede. Do you not realize that the majority of black people live in the South? And so the truth is that we're saying we need investment in our infrastructure. This conference happening here today, we haven't had something like this in a while. Probably since the 60s, when we come together and convene because we've been told that we are a place that's impossible for change. And so this is a message to liberals that the South matters, the South has got something to say. And that if you change the South, we can really change this nation. And so that's what this message is too.
Thank you.
Secondly, there is something convicting that we have to say for those, let me say this, there's culpability on both sides who've led us to this point. Before I was elected to the legislature, I was arrested 18 times in that building. The same troopers who took me to court 18 times, lied on me, forced me to go and pay bond and go through that rigorous process for 2 years. Now I have to hold the door open and say, welcome, representative. So history is bending. But when we got in there, the reason I'm saying is that when I got in there, it was black Democratic lawmakers who pulled me to the side and said, know that you're not an activist anymore. You're a lawmaker. Spend your first year just being quiet. I told my mom that. She said, Justin, you're not an intern. You're there to be a representative and to speak. And so often we have people who want proximity to power but don't want to build power for our communities. They want to get invited to the governor's mansion for Christmas. They want to go golfing with these folks. But the truth is, and I'm going to tell a story about what gave me this lesson, is that it was my first week in the legislature. I was on the elevator. I think I had on my white suit. I was excited. We were heading to a committee, and without any type of opening, State Senator Jack Johnson, the Republican majority leader in the Senate, said, Justin, I just want you to know that you're worthless and you don't belong here. This was my welcome. As a representative of 78,000 people in the most diverse district in the state of Tennessee, as the youngest black lawmaker, this was my welcome. And to be honest, I was shocked. I didn't respond immediately. I went to Gloria's office, Gloria Johnson, and said, Gloria, this just happened. But in hindsight now, it took me a couple days. I actually appreciate Senator Johnson because he taught me a lesson that I'm not here to make friends with these people. I'm here to make change for my district. And that's why we're here. And that's why when you saw us go to the well, we have 24 members in the Democratic caucus. It could have been the Tennessee 24. Right. But other people chose proximity to power over courage and conscience to fight for children and families, begging us to do something. And that is wrong. And so there's culpability on both sides, and we need, I have a lot of people who I work with who want a lot of power, but don't have a lot of courage. And so sometimes you need people to step forward, and I'm just going to end by saying this, that we have somebody in here, a dear friend, a mother who lost her baby in a mass shooting, a black mother who's running, who's going to be a powerful brown-skinned sister with blue hair sitting in our legislature, Ms. Shondell Brooks. And this is a 501c3, so this is not on behalf of APF. This is on behalf of Justin. But when she is elected, she will be the only black woman representing Nashville in the House. But not just that, I want to be honest, is that as Shondell's been running, I hope I can be honest, Shondell, you've had people tell you that you don't look like the proper way a representative, that you're being too radical. What I want to say is that we represent a new generation of movement lawmakers, that you look like a lawmaker, that you will be a lawmaker. And it's time we have people who will fight for our districts and put purpose above title. Thank you. Sorry.
No, thank you. So we've been talking about the context. We've looked at snapshots. We've talked about what is it about the story here that needs to be learned everywhere. We've talked about the conditions of possibility that makes this the story it is, and that we should be looking everywhere to call our allies in rather than allow them to pivot away. This part is clear. Now as we're heading to the conclusion, and I'm saying this to remind us that in the last round, we're going for 1 minute answers to complex questions. So Lee, I've been promising to come back to you to say something about the how of the history that they're trying to interrupt. So you are aware, we're all aware, that there was a big controversy last year over the AP African American Studies course. And in that controversy, Ron DeSantis came up with a list of the things that could not be taught in this African American studies course. Now, obviously, there was a course that could be taught, a course of dates and famous people and making sure we had Condoleezza Rice in it, So there was an effort to teach something about Black history, but there were other things about Black history that were verboten, things that should not be taught, things about power, things about structural ways in which white supremacy continues to play out, ways in which racism intersects with patriarchy and homophobia and class inequality. These are the things that we're not supposed to be taught. So for parents who want to understand, for students to want to understand, how do you articulate why it is vital for us to tell and teach the whole story, not just the story that has been vetted by people who have never had our interests at heart?
The thing about our history, if we don't teach it the way we know it is, they'll make stuff up, right?
Right.
I can remember being in, my first job was in Savannah, Georgia. I remember being in Savannah, Georgia, and just seeing how they had just sanitized Martin Luther King Jr., right? His more radical elements of his speech, his ministry, his activism was oftentimes omitted. Now, how do we get around that? And you alluded to this a little bit earlier. Some of y'all were there in Memphis when Dr. King came there for the sanitation workers strike, right? Some of y'all were alive during the time when Dr. Lafayette and others boarded those buses and ended up going to Jackson and being arrested. A lot of that stuff we don't get in our textbooks, and that's why oral history is really important to me because it animates the history in a way that I cannot in the classroom. So to answer your question, I feel it's vital that while we have our elders here with us, and I'm saying that's cognizant of the fact that I'm about to be an elder, I guess. I need to tell these stories about your triumphs and where you stumbled a little bit. And also, it's important to emphasize that, when Dr. Lafayette sat in, they might not have looked the same way as the leaders did prior to them, right?
Right.
These guys were not lawyers, but they were just students that said that they needed to change. As you look around today, the leaders might look a little different, right? It might look like a brother from California that's wearing a white suit, or a young man from Memphis with a glorious afro. So bear in mind that history is not linear. We move forward. Sometimes we stumble, but the ultimate goal is change.
Yeah. On that note, I want to come back to you, Dr. Lafayette, because if I were to sum up a little bit of what Representative Jones just said, a little bit of what we've just heard about history not being linear. I would say that there's a lesson in this that is reminding us that not all skin folk are kin folk. And what we're hearing is this generation's articulation of I have a broader, deeper vision of what transformation needs to be than you, elected official, or you, head of whatever organization that claims to represent us, or you, media person, sees. This is not new. So clearly, SNCC and the Freedom Riders had moments of intergenerational conflict with some of the elders. So what kind of guidance can you give to this generation from your experience? Going your own way, setting out and saving the civil rights movement, even though some of your elders were saying, don't do that. Or like they said to Justin, that's not your job anymore. What do you lift up from your history to share with them about that struggle?
Well, there are so many experiences I had, and it would take much longer than, 2 minutes, whatever.
She gave you one. It's not going to work in one.
But the first thing I would say is that this kind of meeting that you have organized, it should be continued. In other words, institutionalize this that you're doing right now. Okay? Those are the last words that Martin Luther King told me in Memphis. Okay? I was with him in Memphis. And when when he helped the union workers, he was going to just go up there and have a speech and march, and it got broken up in violence. Oh, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you know who caused the violence? Black gang members. They got downtown and they started breaking out windows. So we had to rethink our approach in the sense that the people who were suffering and needed help, they didn't get that, okay? As a result of the gang members breaking out windows downtown. So we've had another need, and that was to train the young people how to use a nonviolent approach to be able to change things. And that's the thing will do it. Well, anyway, the short of it is that Martin Luther King was scheduled to have a conference in Washington, D.C. to name the office of the Poor People's Campaign. Okay? And because he'd already announced that I had to use up my time already.
Keep going. Keep talking. Keep talking.
See? So he told me that I needed to go to Washington, D.C. So I have a press conference and to be able to make sure it goes well. So I didn't even go to the church that night when he spoke. I was working on a press statement. But when he got back, you ain't never seen nothing like that. Martin Luther King was so excited from that mass meeting. He and Andrew Young, they had a pillow fight. He was an ordinary fella, Martin Luther King. Yeah, he got a Nobel Peace Prize and all that kind of stuff. But he was an ordinary fella. Yeah. So anyway, I stayed there at the Lorraine Motel. My room was 206, and Martin Luther King room was 306. So I stayed there and worked on the press statement. So I had to leave the next day, and so I went there early in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning, Martin Luther King's room, to have him look at the press statement so I could take off and go to Washington, because they're going to do the march over again, because they can't leave it, broken out in violence. So I went to his room, and he was in his pajamas. I'd never seen Martin Luther King in his pajamas. He was the first one up in the morning, and the last one to go to sleep at night. Yeah, but he was there, okay, and in his bed, in his pajamas. So I told him I was going to be headed on into Washington, and gave him the read the press statement to him. As I went out the door, I put my hands on the doorknob, and he said, "Now wait a minute, Lafayette," because that's what he called me. By the way, my son right here is Bernard Lafayette, so don't get us mixed up.
All right.
He's the third.
Great.
So as I was going out the door, he said, "Now wait just a minute, Lafayette," because Martin Luther King called me, by my last name, Lafayette. You know why? Because there was a Bernard Lee on our staff, and you don't want to get the Bernards mixed up. So he called me Lafayette. He said, "Lafayette?" I said, "Oh, okay. Now, well, you're going down and do the press conference, but the main thing I want you to do is to remember that our goal is to institutionalize nonviolence." Institutionalize. In other words, don't just have some marches and some demonstrations, make it an institution. And I'm going to say this right now. That's what SCLC is all about. I made sure that's what it was about, what Martin Luther King wanted it to be about. Okay? And the next thing is this. He wanted me, he said, go on down to Washington, D.C. and start the Poor People's Campaign, all right? And remember, okay, that our goal is to bring about change on a global level. Okay? So that's what I want to leave with you today. What you are doing now, don't leave it to a particular community or state or the United States.
All right.
Okay? Because if you do, it will be ununited. And ununited states means that there is unity in making a mistake. So our goal, if you want to make truth, first of all, we need a monthly, or if not a weekly, program of youth leaders.
Right.
That's what we want, because that's going to make the difference. And I'm talking about a global conference. What we can do to make a difference is have a global conference. Yeah. And you know how you do that? Start off with, elementary school. Every year, first, second grade, third grade, let them learn a new song from another country. Yeah, that's how they learn it. Okay. Yeah. Music. That's why we have music in the movement. The freedom singers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's why you got to have that. Because you can remember that. Music and songs. Yeah. I say this, and because y'all gonna be talking to each other a lot, but I have to go. We were training people in Nigeria because they started fighting the government. These different communities, they started fighting the government because they had a big oil spill over there, and the government, they thought, wasn't doing anything. And what happened is that the oil company gave the money to the Nigerian government, and the Nigerian government, one of the leaders, okay, took off with the money. And see, these tribes started fighting and carrying on, etc. So Mrs. King sent me over to work with the different tribal leaders. So we were able to pull them together and train them, all right, how to be nonviolent. And those Nigerians, they went wild when they started learning about nonviolence. And Kate, my wife, was the one that taught me how to deal with those who couldn't read and write. Because we had some who had come there from the different tribes, and they were carrying the literature on their head. They would put the literature, the books that we use, they couldn't read them, but they were trying to get them as close to their brain as possible. And they told me they slept on them, on their pillow at night, because they were trying to get it in. So then we divided them up so that, they could start teaching each other what they learned. And guess what? Those with the doggone things on their head, the books, the manuals on their head, was the one that was teaching the others.
All right.
You know why? Because if you want to learn something, you've got to put it into a tune. So I had finished my doctorate from Harvard University and didn't know it. I walked around listening to the folks who, with the books on their head, and you know what happened? They were singing the message. And it occurred to me that when I was in first grade in kindergarten, I used to sing my ABCs. Music.
Yeah.
remind all of you who are here that artivism is a key part of Critical Race Theory Summer School, and on Thursday, we will do exactly what Dr. Lafayette told us to do. So we are at the end of our evening here. I cannot close without giving my co-conspirator in this the last word on what is to be done. So Representative Jones, bring us home.
Yeah. Well, before we continue, we have a special observance that we wanted to make sure to honor while we're here, because we want to give one of the giants of the civil rights movement our gratitude, because tomorrow Dr. Bernard Lafayette will be turning 84. And so we wanted to give. And so, in the spirit of music and the movement, I'll defer to someone else to lead us in song, because that's not my ministry. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday.
Let's gather around for the photo.
Yeah.
Let's gather around for a photo. Let's gather around for a photo.
Gotcha.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes.
You got it.
Okay, all right.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Please give another round of applause to all of our panelists.